Alrighty, if the big red button is correct, then we're indeed live. Welcome everybody to the celebration for the paperback release of my book, The Dark Lord Clementine. I'm Sarah Jean Horwitz. I'm a middle grade fantasy author, and I'm here to celebrate the paperback release. Came out just this week, and with me tonight for a little chat for the next hour or so, I have two amazing authors, Bruce Coville and Kwame Mbalia. Thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
I've introduced myself just a little bit, and if we could hear just a little bit about both of you on the off chance that somehow our readers and viewers in the audience don't know who you are yet. So Bruce, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
I'm Bruce Coville. I've been writing fantasy and science fiction for kids for 40 years now. My first book came out in 43 years, 1978, the first book came out. And I got to be part of this partly because Sarah Jean, do you prefer Sarah or Sarah Jean?
Either is fine, but Sarah Jean is wonderful.
Okay, because Sarah Jean has unicorn, very important unicorn strand in her book, and I'm kind of a unicorn guy because my second book was a unicorn picture book, and then I did 2 unicorn anthologies, and then I wrote a 4-book set that kind of got out of control called the UNICORN CHRONICLES. So I've been.
Well, we're going to talk about that later.
Well, I was afraid of that. I've spent a lot of my professional life with unicorns.
My name is Kwame Mbalia. I am the author of the Tristan Strong series. I am the co-author of and then my next book that's coming out in a week and a half, Last Gate of the Emperor with Prince Joel McConan, and I am the editor of the middle grade anthology Black Boy Joy. There are
the title, I love that title, by the way.
Thank you. We between the title and the cover, it's been absolutely received very well by the public. Something about a smiling face just eases the mood a little bit. I do not have unicorns in any of my books, a fact that haunts me to this very day. However, I am a father, and the amount of unicorns that my 6-year-old has, I promise you, more than makes up for whatever shortcomings are in my literature, because I'm pretty sure half her room is unicorn related.
My kind of girl.
Not just pictures. I'm talking about stuffed animals, remote control unicorns, things that walk behind you, unicorns that, see, if I would have known that we were doing props, I would have stolen her entire toy box. I will. You know what? Let me turn off my camera. I will be right now. We'll be right back. Let me go steal some toys.
I think you've proven your credibility.
Unicorn.
What is that?
It's
unicorn
an adoptable unicorn rescue kit.
The gang is complete. The gang is now complete.
You're doing this.
Look at Bruce.
You have to meet the handicorn.
This sounds like it could go in several strange directions.
This has already devolved into chaos.
Okay, here's the feet.
Oh gosh.
Here's the front feet.
Okay.
Bruce, this is nightmarish. This is a party.
The handicorn. He sings, he dances, he prances.
Supposed to be celebration, not nightmare fuel.
I have
Hi,
so many questions.
Hi, Kwame.
So many questions and equally more concerned. I'm truly petrified. That is.
So in case anyone was a little bit confused, my book or horrified, my book, The Dark Lord Clementine, does heavily feature unicorns as a presence, plot point, what have you. And because of that and all of our unicorn connections today, I thought today we'd have like a little chat about unicorns, but also just about like writing magical creatures in general and borrowing from folklore and mythology, but also, you know, making up our own. Somebody, see, I'm looking at the chat and somebody likes the hand unicorn. So you have at least one fan.
Thank you, Lori.
You know what? People like the horror genre too. That's why it's so popular. So, you know.
So a little bit of just like, I guess, housekeeping stuff before we start. Feel free to type in the chat. You can ask questions now. Probably we're going to chat sort of amongst ourselves until about like 8:30 or 8:40, and then take lots of questions free for all at the end. But keep them coming because this is a conversation. We are all hanging out together. And if Bruce or Kwame or me see something in the chat that we'd like to talk about right then, we will hop on that. So thanks everybody for being here. So first, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, the unicorn in the room, which is, Bruce, I'm just dying to ask you about the Unicorn Chronicles. So very briefly, can you tell our viewers just a little bit about that? And then I'd love to know sort of where that idea came from, and then sort of how you went about making the unicorns in that book your own.
Okay, so you're not going to yell at me about this? Is that because for a long time I got yelled at a lot.
Why?
Why? Because it took me 16 years to finish the series. I was for a good 10 years the George R.R. Martin of children's fantasy. I just got letter after letter. I mean, I'm talking thousands of letters like, why haven't you finished this? Where's the next book? I started when I was 12 and now I'm 23. I want to read this end of the story before I die. Yeah, it's funny now. It wasn't then, I'm going to tell you. So I had, it was a high point in my career, and Jean Fywell, who was running Scholastic at the time, and it's pretty much the smartest woman in publishing, in my opinion, because she published the Goosebumps series, the American Diary series. She published Babysitter's Club, and she knew what she was doing, and she brought Harry Potter. I mean, Arthur Levine brought it in, but it came in under her guidance of Scholastic. So Jean said to me, wrote to me once and said, or emailed me, did we have email then? I'm not even sure. It was a long time ago. And said, I'd like you to do a series for us. And Anne Martin is a pretty good friend of mine. We were very close at the time. We were living near each other in the city in New York. And I said, well, I can't do what Annie does. I can't do a book of those a month. She said, no, that's okay. She said, just come in and talk. So I came in and she said, so how about I want a series. I think she said a circus world. And I said, that doesn't work for me. And she said something else. And she said unicorns. And I said, I'm your guy. Because I thought, a deep relationship with unicorns. I'd done, as I said, Sarah's Unicorns, my second book. And I still get letters from people in their 40s who say I slept with that book every night when I was 4, or I took her to the hospital when I was 8, even though it was too young for me, because it was a much loved book. And I had also done this unicorn anthology, the Unicorn Treasury, for Doubleday. So I spent a lot of time researching and studying unicorns. I had a pretty good background at that point. So to do that,
I love how you say this, like, ooh, we have a little bit of sound echo. That's okay. I love how you say this, like you're out there observing them in the field.
Well, you know, like that. It's and one result of that research was I take my unicorns pretty seriously. I had that goofy, this multicolored thing here, but I don't like pink unicorns. I get very protective of the image of unicorns. So I created what's called because I used to be paid by a packager just create Bibles for a series, and I did a Bible for this series, and the Bible basically lays out what the world is going to be, what the concept is, some story possibilities, and the main characters. And they decided they wanted to do that. And we signed a contract for 3 books to be written, 1 a year, and they're all going to be about 150, 175 pages long. Well, as it worked out, the first book was 170 pages. The second book came 5 years later, and it was 350 pages. The third book came 10 years later, and it was 450 pages. And it was really just the first half of a 1,000-page novel, which was really not considered appropriate for kids at the time, that I had to split in half. And I told Scholastic, I said, look, you should advertise this in Cosmo and Glamour, because the kids who want to read this are now 27 years old, but they didn't think the writer. I do, for 10 years, the burden of guilt that I carried about all the kids who were waiting for the story, I finished that story, the final book, at 3 o'clock in the morning in a hotel room in Bangladesh. I'd worked on it over in, I think, 4 continents over a period of 10 years before it was finally done. So that's the first part of this. I don't want to talk about it anymore right now. We can talk about other alarms and excursions and catastrophes later on, but that's sort of the setup for it. It grew far, far beyond my expectations.
And
I got carried away. I got carried away. I had no self-restraint.
No, it was fascinating to hear the origin story. So I actually have only read the first 3 books because I did read them as an adult, and so I did not have to go through the couple of decades of waiting.
Well, let's talk briefly about the 4th book and my bitterness, because it is bitter and because it is my heart. This 4th book that
Bruce, I thought you said we're going to save more bitterness for later.
Okay.
That was your promise.
All right, more bitterness to come.
So I just want to ask you before I ask Kwame a little bit about critters he's familiar with. I want to ask you about like the unicorns themselves and like sort of some of the choices that you made as you were including them in the book. For example, I love the fact that they have these ridiculous names like Lightfoot and like Sky Dancer, but then they're just like normal people sounding like they're just as flawed and just as complicated, and they talk kind of just like normal people. And I just think that sort of that contrast is really hilarious. And obviously the world they live in is called Luster, and so everything is very like shiny and happy about them on first glance, and then when you really get into it, they're like just as messy and just as complicated as any sort of like civilization. And so if you could speak just a little bit about how you made some of those decisions.
First I have to remember this was first one came out in like 1994, 95, so you're asking me to go quite a way back in memory.
I was 3.
I need a minute to recover. Ask Kwame a question. No, I can deal. I wanted to be very true to unicorns, and the backstory that sets in motion all the tragedy and adventure that's going to become tries to wrap together some things about why unicorn lore is the way it is, about unicorns being attracted to young maidens in the woods, about their need to heal. I tried to get all of that in there, and there's my audience was young people, primarily. Although the books are full of adventure, one of the issues we've had is getting boys to read them because boys go, "Oh, it's a girl thing," and then they read the stories and they go, "Oh my God, there's so much adventure and action in here." They love it, but it was playing to the audience to some extent those kind of names. But when I start writing, if the characters aren't getting complicated, I'm going to get bored. So the characters do have to get complicated, and they become more and more complicated as the series goes on, and it branches out. I totally got carried away. By the time I was done, there were 8 separate story strands I had to bring together in the last book. I nearly broke my brain. I'll never do this again.
So Kwame, do you? I know Tristan Strong has a 3rd book coming out, right?
That's correct.
Are you feeling any of that pressure to like bring the threads together? In a big epic fantasy series?
It's what.
Are we breaking your brain right now?
It's no. I mean, like the book is written, but I do remember Figuring I'm trying to answer the question without providing any spoilers or anything, but like wanted to bring closure, right, to not just Tristan and his friends, but also the different folk heroes and gods and goddesses and heroines that we meet throughout the story. Like, what happens to them? Where are they? What are they doing? Um, because you don't want to, while it's fun to kind of leave a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of an open ending for to some extent, in order to be like, well, you never know, something may happen, we may bring them back or anything like that. You want to know what these characters, it's like the montage, the still frame montage at the end of films or whatever, where it's like, uh Jeremy went on to be a high school basketball star, and Terrence crashed the ice cream truck and never served ice cream again. And it's like, it's like, right, just a couple sentences, and it just lets you know, hey, this is what happened, this is what they're doing, whatever. So it was a little bit difficult. I didn't have 8 different, storylines that I had to bring together to get closure.
That's because you're way smarter than I am.
No, Bruce, I'm lazier. That's the difference. And I am not
Sometimes lazy is smart.
So yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I'll say it was difficult in some respects because, hey, I mean, it's my first trilogy, and for the foreseeable future, that's kind of it for Tristan Strong and his friends or whatnot. And so, I wanted to provide them with an ending that was epic, but also complete, and like I said, brought closure.
Yeah, you also have like tons of characters too.
Yes.
Those freeze frames
Yeah.
are going to be like 20 of them.
It's gonna, like, the end of we're gonna be 75% of the way through the movie, and it's gonna end, and the remaining 25% is just gonna be the montage, saying what happened. And I didn't put as many, in every new book or in every book in the series, you want to add, some new characters to keep it fresh and to provide new conflict and new relationship dynamics. But I didn't add as many as I think I did, for book 2 and for book 3. It's just book 1, first book, writing it, debut novel. I'm like, what if I never get to write anything ever again? I got to stuff all of these characters in here so that yes, I wrote about John Hendry and High John and the people that can fly and so on and so forth. Because who knows? Maybe this is it, and I will go back to weighing out, aspirin tablets in a drug manufacturing lab. You never know. So book 1 just had so many characters just shoved in there, and it's great. They're great characters, but then it's like, okay, in book 2 and book 3, I need to, do something with those characters. So you just can't like never hear from them again. You need to bring them back up.
I have to say, Kwame, I'm partway through it right now and enjoying it enormously. And it does not read like a first novel. Your voice is so assured in that. It's very polished and smooth.
Well,
really well done.
Well, Bruce, thank you for mentioning that. I am very good at faking. That is my no. Yes. So it was my debut novel, but it's not the first novel that I've ever written, and so I like to think that there's some that will never see the light of day. There was one that got me my first agent. I wrote another one, and then I wrote Tristan, and so Tristan was actually like the 4th novel I ever wrote, and I just like to think that got better, and then plus I have a fantastic team of editors. I think people, the general public, grossly underestimate how much help an editor, whether it's a developmental editor or copy editor, who somehow can remember or have access to superpowers to recall that in book 1, Tristan's shirt was a 3/4 sleeve green with pinstripes or whatever, and in book 3 that changed reconcile it. That's their favorite thing to tell me. Reconcile. But editors, the copy editors, they're great, and they do, a fantastic job in making me sound smarter than I actually am.
No, so my first book, I wrote two books before the Dark Lord Clementine. The series is called Karma and Grit, and it's like a steampunk fairy middle grade series. And the first Karma and Grit book was the first book I ever tried to write, and it became a book. And you can kind of tell a little bit.
It's still a major accomplishment to get your first book published. I, like Kwame, I had books that I wrote, a lot of books I wrote before getting one published. So I think it's amazing to get your first book published. There may be things that you wish you'd done differently 20 years from now, but really, it's quite an accomplishment.
Oh, thank you. Sort of bringing things a little bit back around to our creatures, Kwame, I wanted to get your take on some of the sort of like the monsters in Tristan Strong, particularly like the Fetterlings and stuff, and if you could tell us a little bit about the process of A, what those are for people who may not know, and B, what the process of creating those was like, and then maybe in your new book, I feel like there was a mention in the summary on the big retail book selling site that shall not be named, where they mentioned city raising monsters. So if you maybe want to tell us, if you can, a little bit about those in your upcoming book, Last Gate of the Emperor.
Sure. I'll start with Tristan. The poster is too far back from. I am lazy. The poster is too far back for me to bring it up. So I will bring the cover closer, and you can see here the Fetterlings that
So
Tristan
scary.
is facing, and basically, Fetterlings are a subgroup under the monster category of the Iron Monsters, which are, the one group of opponents that Tristan faces in book one. And Fetterlings are anthropomorphic fetters. What are fetters, Kwame? Fetters were the chains used to restrain enslaved people, enslaved Africans, when they were marched to the coast and loaded on board slave ships, right? And so a lot of, so that's one example of a lot of what happens in Tristan in the series, which is I try to take the emotional horror and turn that into a creature, right? So the other creatures that appear in Tristan Strong, Punches a Hole in the Sky. We have brand flies, which were flying metal creatures with a poisonous touch. If they landed on you, poisonous welts would raise up. And that was an allusion to enslaved people actually being branded like cattle to mark them as property. The Hull Beast that makes an appearance, which is this kind of like giant ogre / troll creature. It's made up of, rotted wood and planks, and it symbolizes a lot of the crass slave ships that sank with enslaved Africans aboard them. And so a lot of the in the Tristan series, a lot of the monsters, like I said, they come from these, either horrible acts or atrocities. And so, well, how do we what's a good way to describe that, right? What is a good way to convey those atrocities and those horrors to a middle grade audience? Well, we create creatures that represent them, right? So now, a fourth grader, third, fourth, or fifth, or sixth grader, they know what a Fetterling is, right? And right now, they might think nothing of it, right? But as they get older and as they make those connections, they begin to see the linkages between, Fetterlings and Brandflies and Hull Beasts and the Ma'afa. The Ma'afa is a Swahili word that means Malays, right? In the book, the Ma'afa is a giant, ancient, sentient slave ship, right? And the Ma'afa as a term is used to describe the lingering malaise and effects that slavery had on the country, and specifically on African Americans and Africans, distributed worldwide. And so it's what I tried to do in that book is to take the Mid-Atlantic slave trade and turn it into something that can be consumed by a middle grade audience while still providing adventure and entertainment, right?
Just do that. Very easy,
That is incredible, Kwame. That's just amazing.
Thank you. And for The Last Gate of the Emperor, the monster in that book, it's called the Bolgu, and the Bolgu is a tool used by an invading army to, as is said in the description of the website that shall not be named, is used to terrorize and to destroy and to wreak havoc, so that the invading army can come in behind them and conquer and colonize. And again, this is less of a metaphor and just a straight up futuristic monster, pulled from cultural storytales. It looks like a turtle, like an axe-headed turtle with axe clubs for feet, and it's a bionic monster. It's 3 or 4. I don't know how big I made it. It's big. I can't remember. It's big. And again,
that's what the copy editor is for, is remembering how big the giant turtle monster is.
Exactly. Again, the goal for the monster, and the monsters in Tristan and the monster in Last Gate of the Emperor, they're not the main obstacle, right? They are
manifestations, sort of.
They're like the initial I don't want to call them annoyances, right? But they're not the problem in the book. They're not that problem that Tristan needs to solve, or that Yared, the main character in Last Gate of the Emperor, needs to solve. They get in the way. They provide, for us authors, us writers, they provide convenient conflict and obstacles so that the plot doesn't get boring. But they're not the main point, right? Yared in Last Gate of the Emperor is trying to figure out who he is. Tristan in the Tristan Strong series is just trying to get home. And all of these monsters are getting in the way. They're serving as obstacles for him to overcome while still dealing with the main problem. And that's what I think that's what I love about monster stories, right? I love horror. And a lot of times the characters come into the story with problems that they need to overcome. The monster just really lays it bare, right? It gives them no excuse but to face those problems. By overcoming the monster, you are forced to confront whatever problem you were avoiding at the beginning of the story, and you hopefully emerge from that a changed person. And I think that's what attracts me to telling and including monsters and creatures like monsters in my story.
Nice. Now, Sarah Jean, this is your launch, so you need to talk about.
Please.
You need to talk about.
We're 28 minutes in.
So, and let's start with one. I think your version of the Lady of the Lake is just hilarious. Love that character. But I want you to talk about unicorns now, because I think one of my favorite passages in the book is not when you're describing a unicorn, but earlier on when you're describing the impact of the unicorn on people who see or experience it. It's a great passage. So what was your impetus or your research or your creative process for getting these unicorns?
Right. So, this is my lunch. Oh, kind of forgot. Okay. I'm just excited to talk with you guys. Anyway, so I'll just explain very briefly the plot of the Dark Lord Clementine for those who are unfamiliar. So the Dark Lord Clementine is about a little girl named Clementine whose father is a professional evil overlord in a sort of generic Western fairy tale like world. And unfortunately, one day, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, her father, the Dark Lord Elithor, is cursed by a rival witch. And so Clementine not only has to find a cure for her father to save his life, find a cure for this curse, but she also has to take on the duties of being the active Dark Lord. And so she has to start doing evil deeds in order to fulfill her dastardly deeds quota from the Council of Evil Overlords. But the problem is that Clementine isn't particularly good at being evil. And so throughout the course of the book, she starts to question, whether she really wants to be a future Dark Lord after all. And along the way, she, gets into some shenanigans and gets into some trouble and maybe even makes some friends. So that's a little bit about the book. And so unicorns do feature very heavily, particularly one unicorn. And that is because the presence of this single unicorn in the land where Clementine lives. So in mythology, unicorns have a couple of pretty standard powers, right? Like their horns can heal with their touch, or if they touch water with their horn, they can purify the water. So there's a couple of powers that are sort of traditionally associated with unicorns. Of course, the being able to heal people part was something that was crucial to my development of unicorns, because if a unicorn can cure any illness or any curse or any disease, why doesn't Clementine go find and kill the unicorn to use its horn to rescue her dad? And so this really posed a problem, because obviously killing unicorns is bad. Even evil people probably shouldn't go around
very bad
killing unicorns. But so I had to have a reason why Clementine wouldn't go and try and trap or kill or otherwise manipulate this unicorn into curing her dad. And the reason I came up with, by necessity, was that the very presence of the unicorn in this land was what brought magic and life and fertility to the land, so that there was more magic and the crops grew better and they could grow magical crops and magical animals could live there. And it was almost like this whole ecosystem and the well-being of the land and all of the people in it sort of depended on this life-giving presence of the unicorn. And so it almost took on this sort of deity-like quality. And so for that reason, if you go and try and abuse the unicorn's power for your own gain, you will, and you trap the unicorn and it starts to fade away in captivity, or you attempt to kill it for its horns powers, you will curse the land forever and the magic will drain from the land. And so that was a pretty good reason not to go after the unicorn, even if you have to save your dad. It's a total big red button last resort. And so that development of sort of that quality of the unicorns and the almost sort of godlike quality of the unicorns simply came from essentially the plot necessity of why doesn't she just go get the unicorn? And basically it had unicorns in it because the way I visualize sort of the seeds of stories is I'll usually have a couple of characters. For example, I had Clementine and her dad, and I had her creepy farm with all the evil plants and animals and stuff on it. And then I also had a character named Darka Wesk Starzik, who I knew that was her name, and she was a unicorn huntress. And those were the only two things I knew about her, and I knew I wanted them both to be in the same story. So if I'm gonna have a unicorn huntress, I gotta have some unicorns.
Okay, I wanted to ask you how you came up with Darka, because I think she's a unique character. I can't remember anyone quite like her in any other story that I've read. She's a great character.
Thank you. Yeah, so she in the story, she performs kind of a mentor slash mother slash older figure role for Clementine, essentially. And of course, she sort of has ulterior motives, which is that she knows that there's a unicorn in that land and she wants to find and kill it. And she doesn't tell Clementine this.
Well, that's what makes it so great, is the mentor role undercut by what she's really up to. It's just
So she's a very complicated lady. And one of the things I wanted to do with this book is, you know, Clementine has had a very sheltered and certain kind of life where, you know, her relationship with her father is borderline abusive, I would say. She doesn't have any other meaningful relationships. She doesn't have any other friends. And so a big part of the book was her learning new kinds of relationships and new ways of relating to people and new ways of being in the world. And so I wanted her to make friends. I wanted her to be loved as she should be loved and as all children should be loved. But I also did want her to get hurt, you know, and to realize that people can hurt you and that that is a risk that you take when you decide to be in community and in relationship with others, and that it might not turn out great, but that, you know, the relationships and the love and the trust of some people is worth it for the hurt you might get from a small number of people. So that's sort of where that relationship came from.
the cover, it's interesting because the cover indicates funny, and the book is very funny in many ways, but it does have a very sharp edge to it too. I think it's a very powerful mix that you've got there.
Thank you. Anyway, so I'm like super embarrassed talking about myself for 5 minutes.
Kwame was supposed to do it. I was supposed to do it. It's your book launch. Come on.
So I think since it is almost 8:40 anyway, I would like to open it up to questions from the chat. If anybody has any really pressing ones, like put them in the chat. And while I wait for you guys
All right,
to
I got a question
that,
before the chat comes up. I got a question. How did you think of the Gricken? Because I love the Gricken. It's one of the weirdest things I ever saw in a book.
So for those of you who haven't read the book, the Gricken is a grimoire chicken. Kwame is judging me. He is judging me. Okay, so a grimoire is like a big spell book. And so Clementine's family, being a family of evil sorceresses, has a grimoire. And once as a kid, she was experimenting with some spells and poof, smoke everywhere. She accidentally turned the grimoire into a chicken. So it's the Gricken. And it is a giant, papery, feathery creature, which is like 2 times the size of a normal chicken and looks like it's made of book pages, but it's very motherly. It's like a motherly kind of hen, and it only lays eggs when it feels Clementine is ready for a new spell, and each egg is a spell. And so that's the only way she can get spells is if the Gricken lays an egg.
I loved it.
You know what?
Kwame's done. He's like, I'm leaving. So that's the Gricken. People ask me how I come up with stuff like this, and the answer is just usually like I'm unimaginative and I do the most obvious thing, and like that tends to be sort of ironic and funny. Like I was literally just standing in my shower going, grimoire, chicken, grimoire, chicken.
That's what one does. It happens every day to me.
Kwame is officially the Gricken. His pronouns are he, him. So we have a question from my friend John, which is not a real question, which is, have I considered writing a Clementine prequel from the Gricken's point of view?
Yes.
So I think Kwame's gonna write it. Actually,
No, you absolutely need to write that story.
So I will not be writing from the Gricken's point of view. However, one of my current works in progress does actually feature an sort of inanimate object as a point of view character. It's it's a demon sword, and so it is just a big old sword with demonic powers and its own consciousness, and it's one of the major point of view characters. So maybe not as good, maybe not as good as a grimoire chicken being the point of view character, but you know, it isn't a human or even an animal.
I'm impressed. I've done a lot of first person griffin, first person brownie, first person dragon, I think. I love writing first person aliens over and over again, but first person demon sword is like a place I had never got to. That's impressive. I am writing first person rat right now, but that's something I've just started.
That would be fun.
Yeah, I haven't figured out why the rat knows the whole story yet. I'm still working on that
part. Let's see. Lori Snyder has a question for each of you. Maybe we'll start with the Gricken. What is your favorite part of the writing process?
You know what? I actually got asked this question earlier this morning at a school visit. So I still have that answer kind of fresh in my mind, and that is the world building. Normally an idea comes to me, I either have a character as a problem, or a character has a problem, or there is a question that is being asked. You know, what happens if a boy falls into a realm with, you know, West African gods and African American folk heroes? And it's a magical realm. What does he do? What happens there? But for me, the world building, you know, figuring out, you know, how, because most of my worlds are either, you know, futuristic science fiction or fantasy based. How does the world work? What are they doing? How does it operate? While still, because we're writing for a middle grade audience, while still making it relatable and understandable. So, you know, for example, this is the example I used earlier. So, in The Last Gate of the Emperor, kids can ride, you know, these, you know, they have to be able to afford them, but they can ride these vehicles that are called sails. They're moon sails, sky sails, monosails, and they're almost like flying little two-seater drone bicycles, right? And I was just trying to figure out, you know, how would kids get to school, right? How would they get to their school? How do we get to school now? Well, we walk, we take the bus, some of us ride our bikes and stuff. And so, you know, it then becomes, all right, well, you know, people in the future, they're still going to go to school. How are they going to get there? And what's interesting is I started writing this way before, you know, the pandemic and the shutdown and everything. And I was thinking, I was like, my daughter in 6th grade had to ride the bus for 45 minutes to an hour to get to, you know, school. And that's a long time. And I'm like, you know, my wife is big on like equity and education. I'm like, well, what is equitable? You know, forcing someone to ride, you know, multiple hours to get to school, or just giving them the opportunity to take school virtually. And so in the book, there, you know, Yara attends class with hologram representation, you know, students, they're there via hologram. There are some students who are there via, you know, they leave their tiny little bug drones there, and they can see and take lessons through the bug drones. And, you know, in the opening chapter, we find 2 students not paying attention. Their bug drones are wrestling. And so it's world, you know, it's a school classroom, and why wouldn't students do that? If I wasn't in class but I had a drone, I would absolutely use my beetle-like claws to pincer the guy sitting in front of me, especially if he was annoying. And so that's my favorite part of writing, is the world building, finding little cool ways to differentiate this world from the world that we know, while also making it relatable and understandable.
That's awesome. I can't wait to read that. Anyway, Bruce, what about you? What's your favorite part?
Well, for me, I think there's a lot that I love, and the world building is something I really enjoy. My very favorite part is when I stop writing the story, and the story starts writing itself, and that is something that occurs for me usually near the end. And I've been fussing. There's usually a spot about 3/4 of the way through, a little farther, where I'm going, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. And then the subconscious mind does its work. And then the rest of it comes kind of flowing out. And I'm just sitting there typing what happened. And that doesn't always happen, but when it does, it feels so right and so good. Early on, I was working for packagers, and I would write on these paperback originals on tight deadlines. And I think the most extreme example of this was I was working on a book, and I had a month to do it, and it was supposed to be like 180 pages. I used to, yeah. And maybe I had 6 weeks on that one, but it was 180 pages, and I wrote the last 45 pages in one night. And I've been writing a page a day, 2 pages a day, a page a day, 3 pages a day, a page a day. And then it all came together. It's like exploded out of me. And it's the best 45 pages. It needed the least, as fast as it came out, it needed the least revision, editing of any of the pages, of any of the material in the book. So when the brain does that work for you, and you've got to have been feeding it and prodding it, that moment that comes is to me, real magic. I love that.
That's amazing. I want to get
I'm
that
kind of a freak now.
Wow.
Well, I long for it. I don't always get there, but it's great when it happens. That's like when I told you I finished that book at 3 o'clock in the morning in Bangladesh. That last part just came ripping out. It was and the next morning I woke up. It was the first day in 10 years. I didn't wake up thinking, "Oh my God, I got to finish the Unicorn Chronicles." It was such a feeling of relief.
No, that's amazing. I gotta aim for that flow state. So I'm like a big nerd, and my favorite part is the very first revision. So like after I've got my first draft done, this is before I show it to anybody. It's just me. It's just me and this big thing that I made. And I stare at it and I ask it, "What are you?" And
I did that with my children, but
and then that second draft is where I'm figuring out like what the book is. And usually that's when I figure it out. And usually, fingers crossed, the book doesn't fundamentally change sort of after that. So, I mean, obviously, you know, there's edits and there's copy edits and stuff, but usually the biggest changes happen for me between the first draft and the second draft. And I love having something there to work with.
oh yeah.
Blank pages are very terrifying to me, as they are to many writers. And so I really enjoy when I've already got something to work with, and you know, a little rewriting, a little nipping and tucking here and there, to really take it to the next level. So that's my favorite part.
Yeah, it's interesting that you both say that, because I think there's something that ties both of your comments together, at least for me, because in that second draft, we've had a chance, we've gone through the first draft, we've for the most part, we've wrestled with our characters, we've wrestled with our plot and our setting and our world building. And so, Bruce, when you talk about, you know, that subconscious mind going to work, I love when that happens. And a lot of time that happens because we've been, you know, putting in so much effort creating the world and creating the story, that when we come back for the second draft, it's like it feels good, because it's like, I know how to fix this, right? Like Sarah Jean, like you were saying, you know, I know what this story is about now, and I can't tell you how many times I've written a draft just to go back and sort of rewrite it and tweak it, because I now know, like that first draft, I don't write outlines. That first draft kind of is my outline, because I've written the story is out. Now it's just a matter of, you know, fluffing it and shaping it and pruning it into, you know, the final result that we can send off to editors.
And when I'm teaching, I tell people, just get that draft out. You can't fix it until you've got it. People who fix it and try and get the first draft perfect just never get the first draft done a lot of the time. So yeah, I remember vividly when I was young and didn't know how much I didn't know, I thought writing the first draft was fun, because that was the creative part. It just went along. It wasn't that good, but I didn't know it wasn't that good. And this is a long time ago. I was listening to some tapes in the college library, an interview with a writer, and she said, I love the revision process. I thought, are you crazy? And now, you know, after about 5 or 10 years, I got it. Yeah, this is where you fix the book and make it really work. I love that process. I want to point out, just because we have guests here, that Lori Snyder, who asked that first question, has a debut fantasy coming out this fall. It's called The Circus at the End of the Sea. I think I've got the title right. I hope so, Lori. And it's really good. I read an early draft of it, and well, actually, it was the soul draft. It's really good. It's really exciting.
Congratulations, Lori.
I also want to note that I was told there might be kazoos, so I brought to accompany the kazoo, but I don't see any kazoos here. I just want to point this out.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. No, I did not bring my kazoo. I think I have one left over. So for the second Karma and Grit launch party, which was a physical launch party in a bookstore, I have a tendency to go a little overboard on my physical launch parties, just a little bit. And so I bought dozens of kazoos. And I handed them out to all the guests in the bookstore. And then, you know, the New Year's Eve song, Old Lang Syne, that everyone, you know, should all the acquaintance, you know, et cetera, et cetera. That actually features quite prominently in the second Karma and Grit book. So at the end of the launch party, I made everyone bust out their kazoos and rock hard to Old Lang Syne.
Oh my goodness.
And it was very fun.
Okay, I can see why it was hard. You couldn't tell everybody they had to have a kazoo if they wanted to log on to this. So I see why we don't have them tonight.
Yeah, I don't have any songs planned tonight, sadly. Let's see. Jamie Wesson asked me, what made me decide to write Clementine as my next story instead of another Karma and Grit book? Well, that's a very easy answer, which is that I have not sold another Karma and Grit book. The first Karma and Grit book was purchased in like a 2-book deal. So they bought 2 books and I published those 2, and they didn't sell very well. So if you guys love Karma and Grit and you want more Karma and Grit, you know, please buy it and leave reviews and tell your friends about it and order it from your library. Because, you know, unfortunately, until that happens, there won't be more Karma and Grit. And so when it became clear that another Karma and Grit book wasn't going to happen at that time, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I just have like a backlog reserve of ideas. And I was like, okay, what's next? Like, what's speaking loudest to me from, you know, this list of ideas and of people in my head? Who's talking loudest? You know, and so it just so happened that Clementine and her story were really shouting back there. She was ready.
Yes, you know, and you just spilled the secret that we are all of us who write have voices in our heads. It's
yes, there are 3 people on this call.
I don't know about me.
There are 3 people on this call, but really there are like 17. Yeah, it's true. I definitely have like a whole cast of characters that I keep up there, and you know, I used to call it like brain fic, you know, like fanfic, only brain fic. and I have like little daydreams that I play out in my brain. I don't know if you guys have something similar like this, and they may or may not make their way into books. Sometimes they're just to entertain myself.
But if you're not entertaining yourself, you're not going to entertain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to get in trouble for that because I would finish my work. And you know, I would get in trouble because I would be reading in class, and so I would put the book up, but I was done with my assignments, and so I would just, you know, daydream, right? And I would come up with whole adventures. No, I wouldn't come up with like a complete plot, but like I would come up with like scenes from a complete plot, and it would be like incredibly choreographed, and you know, dialogue would be written, and there would be emotional beats, and then somebody would look over like, Kwame, why are you crying in class? And I'm like, they just fought to the death. Why would I be crying? Right? And then it's like, Kwame, you know, go to the principal's office or something like that.
But here's the roots of your career. You know, and as a teacher, I often thought that it's an interesting thing that the same traits that we think make an adult successful try to beat out of kids. like adults. Oh, he didn't give up. He keeps trying. When kids keep trying, it drives us nuts. So we try to teach them to stop. No, you leave me alone. You're bugging me with trying again and again. Then you grow up, and if you don't try again and again, you never sell your book. So it's
Wise
he
words.
stands up for himself. Oh, he's a little monster.
So before we wrap up for the night, both of you mentioned a little bit about your upcoming projects, but I would love to hear, just as we round out the evening, if you've got any releases coming up or anything exciting that you're working on. Bruce, I feel like I've seen stuff I'll just say it, on Amazon about when the Unicorn Chronicles are going to be available on Kindle and stuff. That's coming up really soon. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that, and then anything else you've got going on? And then
okay.
Kwame
well,
/
Unicorn Chronicles.
We'll wrap up with you.
The tragedy of the Unicorn Chronicles was that I finally finished this massive fourth book. Scholastic never put it in paperback. So the end of this massive series that people have been waiting to read for 16 years only has 17,000 copies in print. And I would getting, for the next 3 years, I got angry letters from people who thought I was setting the price, saying, why can't I buy this book for less than $100? Because it was all used booksellers in there. So to Scholastic's credit, I did get back the rights to the series. And I'm reconfiguring it. And I spent a lot of time in the last year and a half doing this reconfiguring. The designer I'm working with suggested I split the big books, the third and fourth ones, which were twice and 3 times as long as the first one, to make a 7-book series. And literally the second half of the third book, which is called Secret of the Delvers, releases April 30th. But more important to me right now is on April 27th, and that is 5 days from now. 5 days from now? Yes. Next Tuesday, I'll be doing an event with Blue Willow Books for a book called The Thief of Worlds. Now, the thing that excites me about this is I started working on this book when I was 21 years old. And I have held it with me. I would take it out to work on, take it out to work on, take it out to work with. I've been working on it for literally 50 years. And it's finally coming out. And it's like, as a friend of mine said to me, it's like redeeming a promise you made to yourself when you were a kid. And I think it's really good. It's the 50 years paid off because I fixed a whole lot of stuff that wasn't right when I wrote it when I was between the ages of 21 and 23 or whenever I finished it. But it's The Thief of Worlds, and I'm really excited about it.
That's amazing. That's so exciting. Congratulations.
This gets back to the thing about stubbornness.
Yeah. And Kwame, Last Gate of the Emperor, May something. Go.
Yeah, so this one. Last Gate of the Emperor comes out May 4th. So, a little over a week. Black Boy Joy comes out August 3rd. And you can't see it. It's hiding behind this right here. I have the cover for Tristan Strong Keeps Punching, which is the final the final book in the Tristan Strong series. It is hiding behind here. So look out for that cover release coming soon. That releases October 5th. So those 3 books are coming out back to back this year.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Kwame, please explain the concept of Black Boy Joy, because I just think it's so great.
Black Boy Joy is a middle grade anthology. So there's 17 authors, including myself. We have short stories, we have poetry, and we have a comic from Black male and Black non-binary authors about the joy of Black boyhood. There are stories that are sad. There are stories that are funny that you will laugh, you will cry. But it's all about interrogating ourselves to figure out how do we navigate towards joy from wherever we're starting from, if we're already happy or if we're the furthest thing from happy. So we have, new authors. We ran a contest, a short story contest, and so we picked 2 authors, so they'll be published for the first time. And we've got established authors. We've got, Jerry Craft and Varian Johnson and Jason Reynolds, who have all contributed short stories to the book. So it's really exciting. I love it. I love the way that the book has come together, uh, because there are different kinds of joy, and joy means different things to different people. And we get to see 17 different variations on joy. None of them the same, but hopefully all of them leading to, a place of just communal happiness. So that's my little pitch for
That's
Black
one of the
Poetry.
greatest book ideas I've ever heard, Kwame. I think it's going to be fabulous.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That sounds so awesome. So I don't have any books coming out this year. Sorry, guys. So just, keep going.
Well, there is this still. You've got your launch tonight.
Yep. Of the Dark Lord Clementine is out in paperback this week. So I hope that you all enjoy it. Hopefully there will be more middle grade fantasy from me on the horizon. And I am also working on my first adult fantasy novel, and it's got dragons. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Thank all of you. Thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Kwame / the Gricken, for coming here to celebrate with me tonight. Thank you, everyone, for your wonderful questions and for your participation in the chat. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm going to end the broadcast soon, and it was lovely to see you all. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.
What is that? It's the band. Oh, it's the exit music. It's the exit music. Bye.